Welcome to The Hill's Coronavirus Report. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Each day we are interviewing consequential leaders and innovators in the battle against the coronavirus. One of the big contextual differences between the pandemic today and those of the 20th century, and there were three certified global pandemics in 1918, 1957, and 1968, is that the human genome had not yet been decoded. Nanotechnology and advances in computing capacity and artificial intelligence were nowhere near where we are today. Just a decade or two ago. Today on COVID-19, massive resources are going into vaccine development and regulatory agencies are leaning in on early approvals to test drugs that might kill or block SARS-CoV-2. There are more than 400 different human trials underway right now, with a much larger number of firms engaged. One of those with a vaccine effort underway is Nano, founded and led by Steve Papermaster, that is trying to revolutionize the way health research is done, using distributed blockchain ledgers and peer-to-peer information and research networks. As one of its products, Nano has developed a germ protection skin spray that is lasting and works at the molecular bonding level. Maybe molecular bonding is what we need in vaccine development. Papermaster was senior advisor to President George W. Bush and a core architect of domestic and global strategy for innovation, technology, and science, including pushing forward the Human Genome Project. He was a member and chair of PCAST, the President's Council of Advisors for Science and Technology, for 16 years, from 2001 to 2017. Steve Papermaster is a career technology entrepreneur who has a lot of insights into what it will take to beat COVID-19, and I'm very, very pleased he's here with us today. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. You have been in this world for a long time of entrepreneurship, cool innovative leaps, and government partnerships. And I'd love to get just your dashboard of what you think we're getting right and what we're getting wrong as we chase this virus.
Thanks, Steve. I think that the areas that we are getting right is we're throwing the resources at the problem. There's certainly plenty of money, capital, federal money, and private resources overall, but it's not all directed at the areas that will have the highest impact. I single out a couple of things. Number one is certainly, as you mentioned, we've got a vast army of researchers and developers working on vaccines. Our team included, which in partnership with Dr. Peter Hotez of Baylor College of Medicine, we are working feverishly, no pun intended, on a very potent, more traditional vaccine for COVID-19, one that can be applied in novel ways, including on your skin and up in intranasal sprays. So I think the other key area that I would call out is that we need more innovation on the prevention side. We need sunblock for germs. It is basically an Achilles heel in our arsenal today of innovation, is that we do not have the technology that we can spray on, wipe on, an ability to block and protect against COVID-19 and similar pathogens for at least many hours, if not up to 24 hours. That is one of the areas that we are rushing through our pre-IND with the FDA with our NanoPure special formulation.
Now, you talk about sunblock for germs. Do you run the risk if you develop something like that or apply it? And I know that Nano has this spray. I've been reading about it. Sounds fascinating. Maybe I should get some. Of those germs actually evolving in ways that they become immune to this. I'd love to kind of get we know that that's one of the big controversies out there of kind of killer bugs and new pathogens essentially being created as we try and defend ourselves.
Right. So the risk of mutation and risk of having multiple strains is one that we always watch out for in any kind of a outbreak of a pandemic nature, or even just a pathogen outbreak. One of the beauties of this kind of technology is that it actually attracts and kills the membrane of the pathogen, COVID-19, on contact. And just like taking a pin to pop a balloon, what you end up with is harmless organic waste. By doing that, you basically have no mutation because you're not changing the RNA or using mRNA, which has its advantages. But in this case, you have zero mutagenicity, and you're not giving the chance for the organism to mutate and evolve, which is a risk that you just pointed out.
One of the things I've been interested in is the government and picking, whether it's picking winners and losers in this race, or whether I'm getting the frame wrong, because I know it's announced about 7 firms that are likely to get, manufacturing resources and other partnership developments. But I know there are a ton of other firms out there that are also innovating all around the world, not only in the United States, but elsewhere, partnering with others. So what does the terrain look like with you as an entrepreneur? Are you being left out, or do you have the resources you need to proceed? Is the government getting that wrong of saying, okay, it's Pfizer, it's Johnson and Johnson, it's Moderna? What about Nano?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I would tell you that there are many of us out here with very novel efforts, teamed up with some of the very best scientists in the world that do not have all the resources that we need. It is a major focus that we have in securing additional private capital and expanding to meet the need in this COVID crisis. So it's something that we are working with FDA in terms of accelerated approval process, NIH, BARDA, multiple government resources, which I do know from my experience well. But at the same time, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we need a stronger push with private capital and public resources as well. And these are both commercial opportunities as well as opportunities to create something very important for the public good, which is the kind of protection and additional immunity delivery vehicles right up through the vaccine that we simply do not have answers to today, even with Operation Warp Speed.
Hmm.
We have great resources, but we do not have a guaranteed success, and we need more of what we are doing and what others are doing to drive out there and get very scalable, low cost products to market as fast as we possibly can. And that's how we end up with a more successful new normal. So entrepreneurs like Nano and our teams and similar to us still need, I think, additional focus, and that would be from a capital standpoint and from a regulatory expediting process.
Steve, you worked with President George W. Bush. You were at the helm of a lot of the biggest science projects of that time. You continued to advise in PCAST President Obama. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask if you think the White House could do a better job of leading in this effort, and what, you're in the private sector now. What do you need from a White House in a pandemic and a time of challenge like this that we're not getting, or are you satisfied?
Well, under President George W. Bush, we did actually publish and prepare what is the still state of the art pandemic preparedness plan. We put that out in 2005 to 2007. The Obama administration had an excellent science team and continued to pursue preparedness for this type of potential disaster. I think the Trump administration and Trump team has done an admirable job with the coronavirus task force, with the COVID-19 task force. Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, and others have provided excellent leadership. This happens to be a very overwhelming crisis, and we are testing the limits of what an administration can do and what federal government resources can do. We're not there yet. At the same time, I think realizing that regardless of being election year or not, this is a sustained war on COVID-19, and we need additional resources, which can be monetary, it can be regulatory focus, it could be expediting processes. So I would urge the Trump administration and the current team to focus on every avenue, leave no stone unturned, reach out to the entrepreneurial community, not just the big pharma companies, and work on expediting both capital and regulatory to get new therapeutics, new vaccines, and new preventative products to market as fast as possible.
Now, I've talked with a great number of insightful people on this, and folks like former Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist, Senator Chris Coons, various congressmen like Congressman Will Hurd, but we've had, I've talked in the past with Anthony Fauci, Dr. Robert Redfield of the CDC. Many of them said, not only have we seen this coming, but this may be a foreshock of other pandemics down the road, and we need to begin thinking more proactively. We need to begin taking what we know, like you just said about the spray, but look at platform vaccines and other things. I just love to get your mind as you think about this as we wrap this up. Tell us what you would do if we were going to begin moving into more of a proactive response in dealing with the next pandemic, like a platform vaccine or other frames that I may not have thought about.
So two ways to think about this, Steve. Number one is this has been our 9/11 moment relative to pandemics and pathogens. So we have been attacked at a level that we have not had before. We have had the kind of impact at scale, both culturally, behaviorally, from a health and security standpoint, that we have never had before. So post 9/11, we created Department of Homeland Security, TSA, and many, many mechanisms to reduce and try and eliminate and block terrorism. We need the same kind of approach. This is a sustained structural change, the way that we saw again in dealing with terrorism, and that has to permeate really every aspect of society, work, life, and play by introducing many paths to lower the risk of passage and transmission and contagion of COVID-19 and any similar type of pandemic. Now, the world is more global and more mobile, maybe not quite as much at the moment, but that will return. And that is an area that we are going to have as an ongoing risk. So these mechanisms, new therapeutics, new preventative technologies, new innovation in this, and even the very definition of vaccine, can that be applied in novel ways on a continued basis? I believe it can. The mechanisms are there. Nanotechnology and nanoparticles are part of that. The ability to apply your skin or in other ways to create the immune response that we'd like. So this is more like understanding this is inner space, SpaceX moment like we've had in outer space. We need really novel thinking and new technology. I believe that entrepreneurs and private companies, coupled with large pharma and government institutions, are going to be the answer. But it's going to take entrepreneurs, just like it has with SpaceX and other similar pioneering environments, to take government institutions, in that case NASA, and take them to whole new levels. We need to reach an entirely new level of innovation on a permanent basis to create the kind of technologies for monitoring, for detection, for treatment, for prevention, and for immunity that we have in other industries like outer space and space exploration. So our inner space exploration has, at this time, received its challenge. I believe that we can deliver on that, but the same kind of cooperation, capital, funding, and long-term horizon is going to be necessary to create that new type of platform to successful delivery of new innovations and successfully having a way to a new normal that is a safe new normal, not a dire threat at all times.
So just to get a clarifying on that, you would like to see something like a TSA that deals with that sort of partners with, NIAIDS or one of the national institutes that looks at that as a security issue. I just want to make sure I got that right.
Well, I think two things. So I'm highlighting the creation of TSA at the time post 9/11. Maybe it's a government institution, maybe it's a reformulated CDC, but I'm also highlighting the need for technologies and products that come out of private industry from entrepreneurs. SpaceX, for example, is a private company. Well, we've just witnessed in the last few weeks, even during the pandemic, multiple successful launches, manned space flight, docking of the space station, launching of dozens of new private satellites during the pandemic, not directly from just NASA, a government institution, but from private industry like SpaceX. And so what I'm calling out is there is a need for rethinking on the government institutions, TSA-like, Department of Homeland Security-like, whether that is what we have today with NIH and CDC, or perhaps a new government institution that is more focused on a permanent funding and set of preventative measures for dealing with future pandemics, and at the same time cooperate more completely with private companies and entrepreneurs for the funding and development of completely novel ways to protect and defend ourselves against this type of threat.
Well, Steve Papermaster, CEO of Nano, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'm very glad you're on the case and look forward to discussing. We'll be back to you again when we're a few months down the road. So thanks very much for joining us. And thanks all of you for joining me today. I'm Steve Clemons. We'll see you tomorrow. Be well.